Texas has frozen over, as we discussed last week. We're still seeing fallout from that massive cold front that hit parts of the southern U.S. Texas Senator Ted Cruz took bold action by fleeing to Cancun with his family before limping back with his tail between his legs and having his photo taken handing out a single pack of water. Ed, what's the recovery on this one look like?
Well, I think Cancun is a very good place for retirement. And the mariachi brand has already been to his home. So retirement, I think, is in order. He is making a bigger and bigger ass of himself. This is a really smart man who has just fallen off the wagon. He knows it. He's hopping around now, trying to be relevant. I think Ted Cruz is a cruise missile heading to oblivion.
Everything's bigger in Texas, and at the moment that includes skyrocketing power bills as power companies decided demand for supply justified charging customers $6,000, $7,000, even over $16,000 for the month, assuming the lights stayed on at all. How can this be allowed to happen, and what's to be done?
This is called freedom and supply and demand and liberal philosophy. Man, don't you get it? Clearly, this is a lot better than that rabbit socialism that got Ocasio-Cortez down there handing out water and $3 million in cash. We need this kind of freedom in the United States, and we'll freely elect some new people to the Texas legislature.
Yeah, Ocasio-Cortez and Beto O'Rourke, I mean, they really stepped into the gap here and seem to be doing Ted Cruz's job for him. We were talking at the last election about whether Texas might actually turn blue. Didn't happen. But with this kind of quality of Republican leadership, do you think there could be changes on the horizon?
Remember Shin Tzu?
Yes.
Don't attack the enemy while he's making mistakes. Mr. Governor O'Rourke. It'll be good to say that, won't it?
I should think so.
I think he was in, 40 different counties or something like that, giving aid. He's got a great base, expanding that base just a little bit, and other people are going to sit on their hands. The Republican Party is losing about 6,000 people a week. You don't fight it, guys. Just have policy, programs, and keep stepping.
A very ugly milestone this week, and one I remember we didn't think could happen. 500,000 COVID deaths in the United States, 500,000. Where are we with recovery efforts?
Well, this is very sad. Clearly, we've all read the news. The number of people getting COVID has gone down pretty sharply, but that doesn't mean there won't be a bounce back, particularly with the British and South African varieties that are so viral. It clearly is a case that the vaccines are working. Over 1 million people have been vaccinated. Joe will reach his target of 100 million by this summer. And as that goes up, the disease seems to be going down. And it seems that one of the things that's been unexpected is the first dose does a lot of good. There's a lot of speculation is that you give out more first doses because, they're holding back for that second dose. But the first dose lasts about 6 months. So if they could double the supply if they didn't hold back dosages for the second dose. And that's being recommended. That's what Israel's done. And that's what Tanzania have done. I think that makes some sense given the supplies have been limited by the snow. So give everybody one shot and your chances are much better. Now, Johnson & Johnson will come on very soon. It does not require refrigeration other than the regular refrigerator. It's one shot, and I signed up for it.
Obviously, you've signed up, and I'm quite happy to get my jab when it comes available to me. But there is a trust deficit in some respects around the COVID vaccine for some individuals. I was amazed this morning. I saw one news story that was saying the members of the military, at least 1/3 of the members of the military that this has been available to, are rejecting having the COVID vaccine. How do you make up for this kind of deficit of people that just don't believe this will do any good for them, may in fact do them harm?
Well, the problem here, of course, there's some misinformation, but there's also some good information. A couple of people have died. What most people are doing, and I'm doing the same thing, I don't want it now, I want it later. I'm holding out for the Johnson & Johnson. A lot of these military people are going to have it because they're in the military, and they're electing to look to see what happens to their comrades before they sign up. That's okay. I don't think there's an anti-vax going on. I think so much misinformation has gone on. People are just doing a wait and see. And I anticipate that by late July, certainly by September, we'll have something like 90% compliance in all the developing countries around the world.
On COVID recovery, we've got President Biden's $1 trillion recovery package, but it seems to be getting caught up in this argument around the increase to the United States minimum wage. Republicans this week have proposed an increase to $10 an hour to counter the Dems' 15. What's happening?
Well, I think the whole idea of increasing the minimum wage is an idea that's good. But think about it in these times when people are unemployed. You don't want to send down employment by small businesses saying, I just don't want to take on all these workers right now. So there is something to this argument of going a bit slower. The Dems want the $15 over 5 years. I think the compromise might be something like 10 and 2 or 3 and the 15 over 6 or 7. But a compromise is much better than an all-out fight here. And Biden said he would compromise on this one, but he's not taking the current $7.
While we're talking compromises in the Senate, confirmations with Merrick Garland looking good for the seat of Attorney General, even getting the nod from Mitch McConnell. Ed, what is this? Bipartisanship? What's going on?
Well, remember, Merrick Garland was turned down for the Supreme Court. And there's a lot of guilt feeling about that among many Republicans who were around at that time. He is known to be an extremely able jurist and a straight shooter by all sides. The Republicans want the Justice Department to be respected again. The Democrats do too. The Republicans think with Garland in, some of these specious things that Trump people were put up will be handled, but in a very clean legal format. They want this stuff gone. Also, they want to see some of the things put on the Democrats' hands, like punishing the rioters, that they don't want to have on their hands. So this is payback time, and the right person's there to do it.
Meanwhile, what's going on with the nomination of Neera Tanden to the Office of Budget and Management? Some are saying this business could mark one of the biggest missteps of Biden's still young presidency.
Well, do you use Twitter?
Not as much as I perhaps should sometimes.
No. Any use of Twitter is no good. Because if you put one wrong thing on it, it's there for life. She made this mistake. She is a good candidate. I'd say she's a decent candidate, but she is a bit strident. And management and budget needs someone with cool head, calm. Joe may get this one. And if he does, he's going to muzzle her. If he doesn't, there are good people in the wings. I don't think anyone will die in a ditch over her confirmation.
And back on ICE, but not the kind that's covering Texas. ICE, the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, have received an interim enforcement memo from the Biden administration expected to lead to a steep drop in immigration arrests and deportations. Biden is obviously doing a lot to disassemble the legacy of his predecessor in these areas. But how much can we read into this one, Ed? How much real reform are we likely to see?
Well, this isn't a reform. This is just going back to the status quo ante. It's kind of in the old days, they call it catch and kill. Those people who are bad people, you spend your time trying to catch them, and the others, you put them through the processing system. There are immigration judges that hear those people who get into asylum. The business with Mexico will remain in force, except for those who actually get the asylum tickets. Nobody's going to be put in any cages. So this is going back to where it was before. But remember, Obama let in fewer people than Trump. But it was all done in a humane way. We have another problem now, and that is the pandemic. Letting people in who might spread the disease is not a good idea. So you can be sure this is going to be another walk slowly. This could really blow up in Biden's face if it's not done carefully.
And in recent weeks, there's been talk about crackdowns on white nationalism in the United States. And in particular, we're looking at a crackdown in the US military. There was a stand down for military leaders to talk about the rise of extremist ideology in the ranks. So I just wanted to unpack this one a little bit. I think we're going to be unpacking a few more of these overarching issues when we get the chance, now that we are with a new administration. Firstly, historically, how do you think we've seen white nationalism take root in the armed services, Ed?
Well, I think there are two parts to this. One of them, the Army comes from that same socio-economic strata. And there is an interesting strain that goes on there. I don't quite understand it. Black and white soldiers seem to get along pretty well when they're facing a common enemy. But when they're not, they're semi-segregated within the military. And that has to be cracked. You can't change these people who come from redneck country because they join the military. So I anticipate there's going to be another test to get into the military, and that'll be, what is your citizenship? And people have to show that they've been members of the Boy Scouts or the church choir, or they've done good citizenship stuff. This will be a good thing to have a better military. But the U.S. doesn't need a big military. And we ought to let it go. The U.S. is darn near a failed state. And the military, as you know, in failed states, is a danger.
Well, actually, that's exactly it. We saw the Capitol coup, and we saw service members and off-duty cops attending that event. And I think if you put up a kind of a Venn diagram of attendees at that rally and white nationalists, it's going to damn well look like a circle. So how much of a threat is white nationalism being perceived, especially white nationalism in the military, being perceived as a national security threat?
I think it's a threat in the same way Muslims are a threat who are in the military, or other people are a threat. It means a different kind of training, not with just them, but in the police forces and so on. A culture has developed, harsh culture and ugly cultures develop. I don't anticipate this lasting. If we can get through two more decent presidents, Republicans or Democrats, this lasting very much longer. Whenever the economy's in trouble, then race relations, class relations thrive. and go terribly wrong. If Biden can get through this $1.9 trillion, people feeling good about themselves, this will go away.
And just mentioning the police there as well, have we seen this one really fully address the threat of white nationalism within police organizations as well?
No, but we hear about it almost every day. Some police organization is rooting out people who attended that event or other events or have seemed to be members of various organizations. Blues are turning in blues, trying to clean up their own ranks. I think when the top is on a mission, and Susan Rice is leading this mission to rid the nation of this kind of class, race hostility, you will see people turning around because they're organized, they're in the military, they're in a police force. It's easier to get out of there than them running around in the woods.
Well, one we'll be addressing, unfortunately, I'm sure, more in future. Ed, thanks very much, mate. We'll catch you again next week.
Well, this is a little bit better than the boring shows, but I'm hoping we get through these cabinet nominations.